Hello, I'm Alex Sherman. This video is about how I dropped out of college but was able to go from nothing to owning my own software development company with 40 employees over 15 years, averaged around 8 at any given time, and then got to become Chief Technology Officer for a company making over $18 million a year. So let's get started. First, this was filmed on an iPhone 12. Put in the comments if you think if the sound quality is good enough or if I need to get a mic. I did not start off with a privileged life. My parents divorced when I was young, and by the time I was 16, I was living on my own, paying all my own bills. I did have some genetic goodness. My dad, very intelligent. He graduated from Yale, cum laude, with a math degree, and one of my first memories in life is him teaching me algebra by drawing in the dirt with a stick. My mom, she was an entrepreneur her entire life. She started many businesses, and she was very good at negotiating. So I kind of got my intelligence from my dad and my street smart, savvy, and salesmanship from my mom. Self-taught. I first started programming when I was 14 years old. My mom got an Apple IIe and asked me to manage the database. We used PFS file, and I managed the database for her mailing list. Her mailing lists were rather complex, and she did antique shows throughout California in several different states or several different cities, and so I got pretty good with database stuff there. Later on, I learned typesetting because she had a newspaper, and so I became the typesetter. I was using a Linotype, and I ended up getting side jobs working for newspapers and contract work as a typesetter, which led to other good things in my near future. I went to college, started college when I was 17 years old. I applied and received some Pell Grants, but I still needed to work full time so I could pay for rent and food. I started my first business when I was 19 years old, had two partners, they were both 18 at the time, and we ran a desktop publishing company using a Macintosh. We kept the company for a couple of years and sold it, and that was great. While I was in college, first year I was a typesetter for the college. Second year I started working as a business manager. They stopped paying stipend to the business manager, so I had to raise the rate per column inch and sold a ton of ads. The next year, they had problems finding enough editors and typesetters, so the college newspaper had a problem, and I told them, no problem. My company, the desktop publishing company down the street, would produce their own newspaper to fill in until the college paper could get their act together. We sold a ton of ads. I got the Bloom County cartoons or comics from Washington Post. So my newspaper had comics in it and was extremely popular. It paid for my college. That's also when I learned that I didn't like government influence. The Associated Student Body was run by political science majors, and they chastised me because for the first time in the history of the university, the newspaper made a profit, and therefore they lost grants, and they thought that grants were more important than making money the legitimate way. I was a business major and a drama minor. I disagreed, so I ran my newspaper in competition with theirs, and it was a very good education. They threatened to sue me 3 times. Of course, they never went through with it. That was more educational than the actual college courses, so after 2.5 years, I dropped out of college. Later, I became an intern for a company called Eucalyptus Software, which was actually run by my dad, and I asked to learn Clarion. Clarion was a database specialty type program, and so I was very interested in programming at the time, and that was when software company didn't have a lot of computers. It was way back when, and he only had 5 computers, and he had 4 employees. So I had to come in at 4 o'clock in the evening, and then wait until everybody went home or started to go home before I'd have a computer available for me to work on. Then I'd work on their computers all night long, pressing compile, writing a little bit of scripts, learning. Mostly, I was learning the help system. And then you'd have to compile, which would take sometimes 6 hours on those old machines. Uh, but it was fascinating, and I did that for about a year. Then at that point, somebody had heard about my previous desktop publishing company, and they offered me a partnership to move to Sonora, California, and open up Graphic Advantage, which was another desktop publishing. We were using Macintosh and Ready Set Go for our typesetting. Typesetting is just another form of programming. It was much more complicated than the software that's available now, and it was good business. It was good business. We tied it with printing services, which we sent out all the printing. At one point, I started Paladin Telecom. I was a real entrepreneur. I really wanted to own my own businesses. I started Paladin Telecom with one partner, and we looked at the 4 best software packages for making a telecard switch. We bought the second best one and thought it would be great, and I was good at sales. We sold a bunch of telecards, and then the cards that we sold in New York City, even though we were based in California, they started being hacked, and we got huge bills for people calling Yemen. So I then did a little research. I found a good Clarion library, bought it, and wrote my own telecard switch. The theme that I found out was between 14 and 30, I kept writing my own software for different companies I was in. I wrote my own client database, my own prospect database, my own sales leads tracking, my own telecard switch, which included least cost routing. Least cost routing can be extremely complicated. We were working with multiple different long distance carriers. And it really honed my programming skills because I was always coding, and I was not really happy with the software that was available, so I was always coding something for myself. Let's see. But by the time I was 30, I always said if I didn't make my million by the time I was 30, then I was going to quit and get a regular job. And I got close a couple of times. We almost signed this huge deal with a Filipino company, but then the Sprint contract turned out to be a little unfair. Sprint wanted to say that if they were ever low on traffic, then they got to still bill the full amount. It was like a $500,000 a month bill, and nobody wanted to sign that, so it fell through. We ended up selling the Paladin Telecard company to a company in South Lake Tahoe, and they ended up not making the payments. So by the time I was 30, I said time to get a regular job. I've never been unemployed for more than 2 weeks, and since I didn't find something worthwhile for the first 2 weeks, I ended up signing up with Kelly Girls. I was a proud Kelly girl. At that time, I was staying with a friend in Monterey and sleeping in the attic above the garage. It was not nice. It was unpleasant, but I was doing whatever I had to do just to make money to have food. And at the Kelly Girls, one of the first job they sent me on was at West Marine, which was a boat company in California, and they wanted defragging of hard drives, which could only be done at night, so it didn't slow down their business. So I went in one night and I saw some people installing software on the computers, and the software looked like Clarion. Now, Clarion had been my passion. I had been doing all my coding in Clarion. I loved it. I still think it's a fantastic language. Of course, it's a little obsolete now. But I had done a lot of studying in Clarion, and I really liked it. I had gone from the Clarion for DOS to the Clarion for Windows. Yes, I did Clarion for DOS. It shows how old I am. And it was fantastic. When I saw something that looked like Clarion, I asked the guy, "Is that Clarion?" he was blown away because Clarion programmers were a very rare breed. And so he took my information. He told me that he'd get $1,000 signing bonus if he found a Clarion programmer. And next thing I knew, JDA Software in Arizona was flying me out to Arizona to be interviewed. I passed the interview, and even though I didn't have a college degree, all they cared about was, does the guy know how to code? I definitely knew how to code. I knew both the DOS and the Windows versions. So they hired me right away, and they even paid a hiring bonus and a relocation bonus, and I moved to Arizona. I worked there for 1 year, and sure enough, everybody told me, watch out, when you're there, it's the most popular place for Clarion programmers, so that's where all the headhunters go to steal Clarion programmers away. I got 3 different headhunters to try to lure me away, and I made a bad mistake. I went to a Florida interview. It was a very strange interview. I might talk about that later in some other video. And they asked me at the end how much I wanted. I thought 80,000 was good, and this was 1997. I was making 50,000 a year at JDA Software, which to me was amazing because it was 1997, and previously I was working 80 hours a week as an entrepreneur, making around 2,000 a month, barely getting by, struggling. And now I was making 50,000 a year, working at JDA Software, only 40 hours a week, 45 hours a week. It was fantastic. It was heaven. And then so when they asked me how much do I want, I said 80,000, thinking that was great. And I went back and I told my manager, hey, here's my 2-week notice. I've got $80,000 coming from this Florida company. And the guy was so nice. He said, Alec, okay, go back to your desk. I'll bring you something. He brings me a printout, and he's like, Alec, if you did a little research, you would have seen that they're advertising. I think they were advertising on Dice, and their starting pay was $100,000. And he said that he knew other JDA employees that started at 120. Boy, did I feel like an idiot. He also sent in one of the other employees that had quit JDA, gone to work for this Florida company, and then after 3 months quit there and came back to JDA at the lower pay. And the guy explained to me that it was a sweatshop. Yes, they catered every day. They had any drink you wanted in the refrigerator, but they also worked you 6 or 7 days every single week. It was really long hours. I decided not to take that job. I did get a different job offer that I did take, and that was in California. That was $80,000 also. And I negotiated that one much better. I made them give me the first price, and then I negotiated, said, okay, but I want to be able to go virtual office after 2 years. Now this was 1998, and that wasn't known. That wasn't popular at all. But the company, they thought 2 years is infinitely in the future. They agreed to it, and sure enough, 2 years later, I moved out, was still working for the company, in a good position, and moved to Oregon. So that was an interesting payroll company. The reason I ended up leaving that company is they hired a contractor to come in and analyze the company and the IT side of it. The contractor went back to the CEO and said he recommended they switch away from Clarion to Java. So they fired everybody. They gave us 1 day notice. I told them they really need to give me at least 1 week notice so that I could document where we were. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to know where they were. They agreed, and I left on good terms. They ended up keeping the lowest person in the company that they paid the least. They hired a bunch of Java programmers to try to rewrite the code in Java. By the way, 10 years later, the Java programmers have never succeeded at rewriting this. I'm not a big fan of Java. I think it's a good language for simple little projects, but not a good language for really intense, complicated projects that need to scale up. So I left on good terms though, and I shook everybody's hands. And I told them, here's my contact information, call me if you need me. And then I started up my own programming labs, which was my software development company. Sure enough, they called me a couple months later, and then I told them my contract rate, which was basically double what my salary would have been for a salaried contract rate. They paid it, and I made some good money for about a month and a half. Then I started looking for other contracts, of course. And after a while, I did a bunch of little projects. And after a while, I went to a Clarion workshop in Florida. By then, they had changed their name to Top Speed. Later on, it became Soft Velocity. So I went to this Top Speed or Clarion workshop, and on the last day, my plane was flying out, so I didn't pay for the last day of workshops. But I was very friendly, and I said to somebody, hey, do you mind if I sit on this class for until my plane leaves, and I have to leave in about half an hour or about an hour, so I'm only going to see half of the class. They said, sure. I sat in, I asked a couple of questions, and that caught the attention of one of the other classmates. And he asked if he could talk to me in the hallway. We went to the hallway, we exchanged cards. He was a programmer who owned his own software development company. And he was going there to search for other Clarion programmers that knew more about websites and SQL databases than he did. It became my best contract ever. Programming Labs did work for this guy and for his company, which was a mom and pop company. Literally, it was owned by a husband and wife for special education software. And we worked for them for about 8 years. I was able to grow my company, add more programmers, and it was full-time at contract rates the entire time. And we helped migrate his software, which was already successful in 2 states, from a Windows machine to the web, from Paradox database to Microsoft SQL. So it was a great contract. We helped build up his website. We helped him expand from 2 states to, I think he was at 6 states at the end. And then he ended up selling his corporation, including the website and all the technology, to another company, became a millionaire, and retired. Great for him. It was an interesting learning experience for me. And I'll talk more in some other video about negotiating and how I got really good contract rates out of that. One of the things that happened during that time was I was doing workshops every year, and I would fly in all my staff because I had staff from different countries that worked for me. So I'd fly them in, we'd do a 1 or 2 weeks worth of workshops. And during these workshops, we'd go over the newest technologies and our plans on how we're going to help clients and things like that. At one of these workshops, my favorite client from the special education company asked if he could come to the workshop as well and discuss one of his new projects that he wanted us to work on. So of course I said yes. During that workshop, I also previewed the Wizards Toolkit, which I told him I was going to use for other clients, but we couldn't really use for his website because so much of it had already been completed using Clarion ASP for making his ASP web pages. He was blown away, and he asked if we could rebuild his entire website, which at that time was several hundred pages, using my toolkit, so that he could have some of the bells and whistles that I had, which were not available in his current environment. So of course we said yes, and that made the next 2 years extremely profitable as we rebuilt everything from scratch using the new toolkit. Let's see. So I also ended up traveling around the world, and one of the things I discovered while traveling around the world is high-speed internet is available almost everywhere. There are some countries that you don't want to go to, and some countries, they have serious internet problems. But most countries, their internet is actually faster than the United States. I know, a lot of people are thinking, no, the United States is best at everything. No, a lot of countries have faster internet than the USA. And it's very easy. Now, of course, in every country, including the United States, there's dark spots where the internet's no good. You just don't move there. I was able to move to Panama, then later the Czech Republic, and lived in Prague, and later Hungary. And in each of these places, I traveled to all the nearby countries for weekends and had a great time. It's very possible to live the virtual lifestyle and yet still be putting in your 40 hours a week doing contract work, making the big bucks. And I'll be going over that in more detail in other videos. I had programming labs for 15 years, and during that time had 40 employees, not all at once, that was off and on. I hired a couple different project managers. Unfortunately, neither of them worked out very well. The programmers, I had SQL people, PHP people, ASP, HTML, JavaScript. Several different SQL people helped out a lot. It was a very interesting time, and we created our own invoicing software that did all the time tracking and did earnings reports and did all the invoicing automated to clients. So with push of a button, it would generate a PDF and email the clients for the invoice. After my main client was bought out, I had picked up a couple of new clients, and I started to get a little bit, I saw an opportunity. I saw an opportunity because one of my new clients was in a strictly retail marketplace, and I saw an opportunity for them to go residential. And so I approached them. I said, let me be your chief technology officer. And they had at that point been paying me for 3 years as a contractor company. I told them, if you hire me as your chief technology officer, I will close down my programming lab software development company. And I need 4 months to do this because I'm going to make sure that all my clients are well taken care of, and I want to make sure that my employees are well taken care of as well. And what I ended up doing is we documented everything, and then I transferred most of the employees to work directly as employees for the clients. So it ended up saving everybody money. They got health care and got to work for the clients directly, and instead of paying contractor rates. And then I became chief technology officer, and what I negotiated was not only the company couldn't afford a top dollar CTO, but they could afford a decent CTO salary and 10%. So I negotiated for 10% of the company with the expectation that we were going to branch out into residential, and I'd get 10% of the residential part of the company, which is what my big goal was. Well, I worked with that company as their chief technology officer for 5 years and 5 months. And during that time, we've upgraded their website from Zen Framework to the Wizards Toolkit, which had gone through 3 different revisions by then. It is a PHP library. We had upgraded them to that, to Bootstrap, HTML, got their GUI looking really great, added lots of new features. But the 4 times that we started working on the residential project, they would always end up putting a halt to it because they wanted to work on something different. They wanted to approach restaurants or some other retail market, and I really thought the future was residential. So after a while, after the 4th time, when we were 98% finished with the mobile apps for the residential rollout, and then they said, nope, we want you to stop working on that and start working on a different project, I quit. Frankly, also because the owner of the company voted for Trump. No bueno. So I told him, it's over, good riddance, you can keep your 10%, and I quit. That was November 5th, 2 days after the election. And now, I'm here, YouTube. Hi. I've been working on the Wizards Toolkit, upgrading it for making it better for mobile app development. It's going to be a hybrid app developer, as well as working for normal websites. I'm almost finished with the finishing touches on it. I'm very excited about it, and I'll be going over that in other videos. But that's how I became a chief technology officer from being a college dropout. Hope it was educational. And before I let you go, I've heard that smiling and laughter is really healthy. So I'm going to try to end all of my videos with a joke. Here we go. This guy, he joins the army, and after his first day of exercising and doing all the grunt work, he goes to the bunks and he gets into a top bunk. And that night he closes his eyes and he's starting to fall asleep, and he hears somebody yell out, 17! And everybody around him starts laughing and laughing. He's like, what the heck? It gets quiet after a few minutes, and then he hears somebody yell, 22! Everybody again laughs and laughs and laughs. They're like cracking up. And he rolls over and he asks the guy underneath his bunk, says, hey, what the heck is going on? And the guy says, well, we've been together for 2 years, and we all told each other our best and favorite jokes. Well, after a while, we don't have any new jokes, so we would just tell the punchline. And then everybody would remember the joke, and then they would all laugh like they just heard the joke for the first time. Well, after a while, even that got old, so we numbered the jokes, and now we just say the number, and then you remember the punchline, and you remember the joke, and then we all have a good laugh. It's great. The guy's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So a couple weeks go by, and he's listening every night as they call out these numbers, and they laugh and laugh. So after 2 weeks, he decides, I'm going to give this a try. So he waits till it's been quiet for about 10 minutes, and then he shouts out, 17! Silence. Absolute silence. He waits, and then he whispers to the guy below him in the bunk bed below. He says, what happened? Why aren't they laughing? And the guy says, well, some people can tell a joke, some people can't. Have a great day.